asked you, like, how does it feel that there's just so much interest, in your in CNAC's story, um, and you said that, well, it's because a lot of people never talked about it, and then all of a sudden their grandchildren or their children want to know about it. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I think most people coming back from the wars, it was nothing to glamorize. And they wanted to protect their children from the horrors and the bestiality of the war. But as they grow older, they want the truth so they could be with their fathers and uncles and everybody else that was out there. So that is why right now at our reunion in San Francisco, the people said, the war in Europe has been covered to death. The people are interested that the forgotten theater be told too. And when you tell us there's a band of flyers over there that, like no other in the world, it's just like science fiction rather than honest to goodness fact. We didn't know they had to fly in such difficult, unheard of conditions, eh? So that is why all of us in our old age, we try to present this to the people so that they know that it was no joke.
One thing that stands about CNAC's flying, from what I've read, is that you tried to take off in bad weather. I mean, as far as the commercial flights, this is a different period for CNAC, but as far as the commercial flights between some of the cities, because the Japanese were just brutal, they would shoot down commercial flights. So is this true that if it's raining and really bad weather, you take off because the Japanese wouldn't be up there?
They couldn't fly, so we took off just inside the cockpit at night with thunderheads all over the place and flashing. We just set the gyro on there and the runway heading and keep our head in the cockpit, take off until we got 60 miles an hour, ease back on the stick, took off, lifted the landing gear, and you're on instruments and gone. It was unheard of. What I told people back in Canada that we flew through thunderheads, rainstorm, hail, ice, did instrument takeoffs. We'd talk each other onto the runway in India when fog was all around, eh? We'd go taxi out the end of the strip there. Okay, turn your lights on, we can see you. You're inbound from the station there. You're about half mile out, quarter mile out, you're 300 feet out. Get down a little lower. You should be able to see the lights very shortly. Okay, we see the lights. It says, okay, you're a little bit to the right too far, come a little left over there. Oh, we can see the lights now, and we set them down. So that was our first instrument landing system, just pilot to pilot information.
How does that stack up to today's standards? I mean, that's pretty primitive, right?
But it's pretty primitive, but it's just one man on the microphone talking to the other pilot. These days they got radar to give you the height and DME to measure the distance outbound and everything else like that, and they got high intensity lights. All we had was a little bottle there filled with diesel oil and a wick, and we'd light. So about every 100 feet would have one of these things. It's just a match in the middle of the night. But these days you got bright lights and approach lights and everything.
When it was apparent that the communists were going to win the war, 1948, where were you and what were you doing?
We were up first in Manchuria, trying to hold them off there. The nationalists were holding the cities and the railroads. They couldn't get any supplies except by air. So we'd be flying supplies up there by air, eh? And, but the communists had all the people on their side. The nationalists were so corrupt, and they would press gang people into their armies without training, and they're supposed to go out there and fight, eh? Whereby the communists would get them, and they treat them good and treat them like human, feed them, and slowly we had to retreat further south. Then we did a massive airlift in Shandong province from Tsingtao to Taiyuan and back. And that governor up there with the Japanese put many ironworks and coal and iron up there. He held for quite some time, but slowly the ring closed in there. So we're dropping by air. And then towards the end there, they needed the ammunition and the stuff, so we'd be kind of high explosive. And one of the hills, they'd have a deep valley where a river came down, but it come to a dead end. It wasn't very long. If you didn't stop, you flew into the mountain, So we'd land in that until one airplane taking off crashed right at the end. So then we'd have to come over and land over his great big tail sticking up there and make sure you get down in time, otherwise you slam into the mountain. Then when you get there, you'd have to swing it around, leave one engine running, so make sure you had power to start the other one, and then the soldiers jump aboard and bail that all out, bail all the cargo out, and then we'd be in the caves there, And when the all clear sounded, we'd go racing back out there, and then we'd take right off the way we land, So that was Taiyuan, Yeah.
Hijackings were a problem, I understand. Near the end of the war, you had
Yes,
towards
the end of the war, the first aerial hijacking, I believe, happened in China. One of the CNAC planes going from Shanghai to Jinan, one of the hijackers said, "We're going here," and that's where they went, But they finally released them, So another guy was flying a C-46 up around the Great Wall. He landed there, and the communists had one side of the field, the Nationals the other. And they rolled out the wrong side of the airplane. If they would have gone out the other side, they would have gotten the clear. So they were captured for about 6 months, and the communists eventually let them go.
Have you, Chiang Kai-shek and Madam Chiang, they were big supporters of CNAC. Did you ever meet them, or? Never
met them, but I saw Chiang when he was retreating after the big Wahai River battles. That's when China lost the war, and over 1 million troops, 500,000 on each side, fought southwest of Suzhou, where the railroads, north, south, east, and west intersect there. So we fought from November the 6th to January the 10th. On January the 10th, we came overhead, and they said, "Woi Nanjing, return Nanking." We requested why, how, where, when. All they say is "Woi Nanjing, return Nanking." And that's when we got back to Shanghai. We found out that Dang Yen Bo, the commanding general, had surrendered to the communists.
What did you do after CNAC pretty much finished? After that, did you go back home, Canada, or did you go on?
No, I stayed right through there, and then we had to go up towards the northwest, where all the soldiers retreated. And there they had two famous Muslim generals, Ma Pufang and Ma Hongui. They still had an army up there, so they needed money to fight the war. So on one trip, I departed Chongqing and went towards Lanchao, but they were shelling us as we was landing into the sunset there. So the weather was so bad in Chongqing, I didn't think I could get back in there. So I proceeded further upriver, 100 or so miles, and I found a walled city there. But I saw a light aircraft circling and then land. So I went down there, had a look, and it's a flat playing field there. And I could see the laying rocks on top of this playing field. They was building a runway. And so I cleared the people off the side of the runway, and I landed there. So I pulled in there, and I found an old friend of mine Blackie Wong. I said, Blackie, what are you doing here? He says, I'm flying for General Ma Pufang. And I said, where are we? He says, Saining, the capital of Qinghai province. And I said, gee, my airplane's too heavy. It's sunk in the mud there. He said, just leave the brakes off and I'll have them get that thing out of there. So next day when we got out there, there's kind of a trench dug, an inclined plane, and they put ropes on both sides of the landing gear and got about 500, 1,000 people, towed the airplane right back on there. Meanwhile, the load of silver we had for Lan Chao all went to this Ma Pufang.